let's get started with the main event, and I would like to call to the podium our Vice Rector for Academic Affairs, Professor Elena.
Thank you so much. It's a great joy and pleasure to be here today, and I would like to welcome you at the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship Forum, the British Entrepreneur, which is organized by our Center for Entrepreneurship of the University of Cyprus, with the ongoing invaluable support of PricewaterhouseCoopers Cyprus. I would like to extend our gratitude to the major sponsor, contributor, and strategic partner of the Center, which is, of course, PricewaterhouseCoopers Cyprus. Since its establishment in 2015, the Center reached out to the university community seeking to identify needs, expectations, and opportunities regarding innovation and entrepreneurship. The Center's motto, educating, innovating, networking, emerged out of this effort. This triptych epitomizes the Center's mission, activities, and aspirations. The Center's aim, first and foremost, has been the empowerment of the University of Cyprus students, researchers, faculty, and staff with the skills and the knowledge required to engage in creative, innovative activities leading to new ventures or innovative new practices and solutions. In its first 7 years of operation, the Center for Entrepreneurship has designed, established, and operated numerous initiatives and processes to advance these 3 pillars of its mission. The establishment of the certificate program in entrepreneurship, which is an individually tailor-made program for students of all disciplines. The delivery of semester-long and short courses, hands-on training seminars, mentoring programs, and distinguished lectures. The annual Student Innovators Competition that eventually developed as the major pipeline of early-stage startup ideas to the whole Cyprus entrepreneurial ecosystem. The Cyprus Entrepreneurship Competition, with a high-quality, zero-equity media acceleration program open to all permanent residents of Cyprus, vested with the support of a prominent network of mentors and trainers. The Center is also the national coordinator for the 6th consecutive year and represents Cyprus in the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor study. In 2022, the Center, with the support of PricewaterhouseCoopers Cyprus, presented the first study on the mapping of the Cyprus entrepreneurial ecosystem, a project that aims to create a useful tool for monitoring the course of the ecosystem based on critical specific indicators. So, today is the 7th annual forum, and the forum emphasizes on the pathways to novel discoveries and the evolving journey from basic research to entrepreneurship and innovation. This year, we seek to discuss the current debates and future directions, shifting the focus of academic research towards more business-oriented models. The 7th Forum is expected to bring together the cycle of academic research and startup communities, professionals, decision-makers, change-makers, thought leaders, technologists, and industry experts, offering an engaging opportunity for exchange of ideas and collaboration. In this year's lecture, The Power of Purposeful Curiosity, How Asking the Right Questions Will Change Your Life, we are very honored to host Professor of Innovation and Entrepreneurship, Kostas Andriopoulos, from Bias Business School, the University of London, along with a prominent panel consisting of Mr. Philippos Sosilos, CIO and Chairman of PwC Cyprus, Professor Marios Diakos, Chairman of the Center for Entrepreneurship Council, Maria Terzi, co-founder and CEO, Mario Carinci, and Olivia Pahumi, Innovation Hub Manager at Chios Research and Innovation Center of Excellence. The research exhibition hosted in this year's forum is the University of Cyprus biennial flagship event on emerging research results and projects with a strong market for societal potential impact that can be materialized through novel products, processes, or services delivered by new or existing ventures, private or public organizations, governmental institutions, or non-governmental initiatives. The exhibition is divided in the following sectors: smart infrastructures, health science, life science, energy and clean tech and IT, communications and devices. The exhibition is organized by the Research and Innovation Support Service of the University of Cyprus. forum, we are presenting the finalists of the third edition of the Cyprus Entrepreneurship competition. The competition is initiated by the Center with the support of the Ministry of Energy, Commerce and Industry. A business development competition designed to take innovative ventures to new heights with the support of experts and entrepreneurs through the multidisciplinary network of mentors and partners. The competition aims to turn ventures into viable businesses with global orientation, and we are really looking forward to see the winning teams of 2022. For the last 7 years, the Forum aims to promote successful action, innovation and research commercialization, and to contribute to the continuous open dialogue of the university with industry, the economy and the society. The Forum aspires to establish and maintain bridges with economic and social stakeholders, the market and the society, and to add constructive value to all national attempts into translating the knowledge and the ideas into impact with a tangible benefit for the local and the regional ecosystem. In the University of Cyprus, we strongly believe that we are surrounded by a community that is brilliant and focused on creating new knowledge, products, technologies, and primarily value for the society. We intend to create and train a steady stream of graduates who are able to transfer their ideas and their knowledge to the market and to the society. In the University of Cyprus, we seek to generate knowledge outside academic environments to the benefit of the social, cultural, and economic development and to sustain our function as an important node in distributed innovation surroundings. So we really hope that you find this event beneficial, stimulating, and productive. And thank you again for joining us at this event at the 2022 Innovation and Entrepreneurship Forum, and I wish good luck. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Tatiana. I would like to call to the podium the Chief Scientist for Research and Innovation for the Republic of Cyprus, Mr. Nicholas Moslegianopoulos. Welcome. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Manos. Always a pleasure being here at the powerhouse of research and innovation, the University of Cyprus. So, without further ado, Honorable Professor Andreopoulos, Honorable Vice Rector of the University of Cyprus, dear Mr. Sosilos, CEO of PwC Cyprus, dear professors, members of the Center of Entrepreneurship, distinguished speakers, and guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great pleasure that I address the 7th Innovation Entrepreneurship Forum, an initiative for discussing pathways to new discoveries and the journey from research to entrepreneurship, bringing together researchers, professionals from industry and business leaders, and successful entrepreneurs. Since its inception, the mission of the Center of Entrepreneurship has been to foster a culture of innovative entrepreneurship within the University of Cyprus and to contribute to the creation of a sustainable innovation ecosystem in our country. A vision that I deeply aspire as the Chief Scientist for Research and Innovation and the Chairman of the Research and Innovation Foundation. A vision that is also shared by PwC Cyprus, which has been a key supporter of the project. Therefore, I would like to congratulate once more the Center for Entrepreneurship for their tireless efforts. Your dedication has already started to bear tangible results. We look forward to this year's showcase findings and the finalists, the curious entrepreneurs of the Cyprus Entrepreneurship Competition, for their pitches. Let me also extend my greetings to all the esteemed fellow speakers, and particularly Kostas Andreopoulos, Professor of Innovation and Entrepreneurship of the University of London, who will present the power of purposeful curiosity and how asking the right questions can change our lives. As Albert Einstein once said, I have no special talents, I am only passionately curious. Words of wisdom. So, ladies and gentlemen, over the past few years, research and innovation entrepreneurship have grown significantly in Cyprus. In fact, our country ranks 10th in the overall index in this year's European Innovation Scoreboard results, listed for the first time among Europe's strong innovators. At the same time, the Cypriot government has implemented a series of breakthrough reforms and investments, while it is fully committed to creating a favorable environment for startups and innovative companies to be established, scaled through its determination and long-term strategy. To this end, the government introduced the National Recovery and Resilience Fund, codenamed Cyprus Tomorrow, with an overall €5 billion investment mainly in digital and green transition. In addition, the government established the Cyprus Equity Fund in collaboration with the European Investment Fund, a €30 million investment for the accelerator and the VC compartment, mainly to support innovative companies, startups based in Cyprus. The Cyprus Equity Fund will make available risk financing to companies seeking primarily pre-seed and seed capital to grow their business. We are on the right track, however, for research and innovation to flourish and yield the best possible results, broadening the academia business cooperation networks and bringing the best talents of our research community together with businesses is of utmost importance. Building strong synergies that will lead to the establishment of a productive research and innovation environment and create a robust and dynamic ecosystem that is fit for the future. An ecosystem that adds value horizontally across all sectors of the economy, builds opportunities for socioeconomic prosperity, and attracts investments. With this in mind, the Research and Innovation Foundation launched its new framework programs to enhance the extroversion of our ecosystem with an investment of €150 million to invest in state-of-the-art research, critical infrastructure, and enhance linkages between industry and academia and support research excellence and innovation. Additionally, this past July, the Research and Innovation Foundation announced the results of its third round of innovation program, with more than €8.5 million being allocated to 22 startups and innovative enterprises, exclusively for the creation and development of innovative products and services with significant potential to penetrate the international market. Finally, we're proud to announce the RIF's Central Knowledge Transfer Office initiated operations a couple of months ago, seeking to enhance the commercialization of research results, reinforce the links between our research community and businesses, and transfer products and services that emerge through scientific and technological research to both the public and the private sector, supporting significantly our economy and society. Dear fellow speakers and attendees, the aforementioned reflect the government's strong commitment to turn research and innovation into a fundamental country's new growth model, capable of expanding the productive base of the economy as well as fostering innovative entrepreneurship and accelerating the green and digital transition. Our goal is clear: boost Cyprus' position in the global market and promote our country as a regional and innovation hub, while providing our scientists and entrepreneurs with access to plethora of available networks and opportunities to help them promote their work on an international level. Once again, I would like to congratulate the organizers for this impeccable event. I am confident that the following presentations and discussions will be inspiring and beneficial for everyone, paving the way towards a brighter future and empowering the youth to create impactful change. Thank you very much.
It is with great pleasure that I welcome our keynote speaker, Professor Kostas Andreopoulos, Professor of Innovation and Entrepreneurship based Business School, University of London. Welcome to Cyprus.
Okay, good morning from my side. Thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure, and it's a great thing to be here with you, physically, not remotely. The last time that I was here teaching on the MBA program was in 2017, if I remember correctly, so it's great being here. And I'm going to talk about something which is very close to my heart, and it's, of course, curiosity. And being an academic is part of our job, right? So, when I started, for instance, as a researcher, I saw the contract, and in the contract it was saying you have to do the research. And then I asked, what kind of research? Whatever you want. And I said, okay, so you allow me to do whatever I want, to explore my curiosity, and then you will pay me. And they said, yes. I said, that's a fantastic job. Where can I start, right? So I started doing this, and then I said, I'm very curious, and I have always been curious. Since I was a child, which I think it's great. I think all of us have been curious, and that's the testament of my curiosity. Sometimes, this is what I was saying earlier. People pay you for your curiosity. Sometimes you have to pay in terms of learning. So, for instance, if you want to learn about investments, you have to make an investment, which means you have to actually, part of some money. So, but this is a learning opportunity. So, because I was very interested in terms of curiosity, I went to a long research trip, which actually took me 5 to 6 years, in terms of figuring out more about curiosity. So I was curious about curiosity in a way. And then I wrote this book, which is out in the US, which is called Purposeful Curiosity, and in the APAC region, then it comes in February in the rest of the world. So the interesting thing about this is that I started researching, and I found a couple of interesting things. For instance, that our questioning drops over years. So look at this. Kids under 4 ask on average 73 questions per day. So it's astonishing. I remember I had a daughter when she was 4, she was amazing. She was asking a lot of questions, which I didn't find actually bad. I found great. Now that she's 17 and a half, she asks less questions, which actually takes me to the other point. Adults ask on average 20 questions per day. And I think that's an optimistic research that I found. Most probably, I think you have figured it out, that you don't ask so many questions, right? And then, if you actually turn the table, the average teacher asks around 300 questions per day. So the educational system is quite a problem to what I'm going to discuss today, which means that people are learning to answer rather than people are learning to ask. Okay? So this is something that I would like us to remember. So this is the situation. This is the context. This is the setting. Then, I need to add another complexity, which is what I refer to as frivolous curiosity. So what is frivolous curiosity? For instance, is scrolling on social media, looking around, I don't know, we are bored, so we are looking on Instagram, we are looking on TikTok, whatever. So this is frivolous, because it's curiosity that doesn't translate to a project, that doesn't translate into something. So how many of you are doing this? Raise your hands. Right? Okay. The problem is not that you are doing this, because I'm doing, you are doing, everybody's doing. The problem is for how long are we doing this, right? So there is a thin balance here. So I have a couple of interesting, for instance, questions. How many times do we check our phones per day? You don't have to respond to that. I'll give you some facts. How many hours do we spend online per day? You will be shocked. Again, how long do we spend on social media per day? Do you want to know these answers? No. You are absolutely right. You don't want to know these answers, because these answers are actually a little bit disturbing. Oops. And you see, 344 times, 7 hours, more than 2 hours per day on social media. So the point is, where do we spend our time? All of us are curious, right? But where do we channel our curiosity? Do we channel our curiosity to this kind of things, or can we channel our curiosity to something that means a lot to us, right? Something that has a purpose. So this is where this thing about intentional curiosity, I didn't know the word at that point when I started 6 years ago. Intentional, purposeful, this was what I was interested in. And then I looked more at the literature, and I found the benefits of curiosity. So I said, curiosity is a good thing to have, right? And I have my best friend, I'm going to be 50 in January. So my best friend told me one day, you're the most annoying person in the world. And I asked him, he said, you're supposed to love me, right? You're not supposed to tell me those things. He said, yes, I love you, I'm telling you those things, because you ask 100 questions. If we are old, you shouldn't be asking those questions. And I said, that's amazing. So I looked at this, and I found all these fantastic benefits. So I don't need the reference for curiosity helping us to survive, right? But it makes us happier, it makes us come across as warmer, and of course more attractive. Then it leads us to higher achievement. It can expand empathy, and is associated with longevity. So there are a lot of interesting benefits if you think about curiosity. And I met a lot of curious people, and the first thing that I saw in terms of all these curious people was the following. They are very engaged, they are present, they are there, they are interested, right? So this is what makes a lot of these things, a lot of these benefits to actually happen. Now if you look at business now, it leads to groundbreaking innovations because people are always looking for something else. So to me, curiosity and innovation, they are interlinked. Curiosity and entrepreneurship, they are interlinked. Investing in curiosity, they are interlinked. So an entrepreneur is somebody who is curious and optimistic. An investor is somebody who is curious and who worries all the time, right? Whether the investment will actually reach fruition. It reduces group conflict, it leads to better team performance, it leads to job satisfaction, and it drives also more sales, right? So there have been a lot of studies about this where they show that if you show a product and you give some information, but you don't give all the information, people's curiosity sparks. So you intrigue people, right? So there are these kinds of studies that show this. In terms of the other, which are more internal, group conflict, better team performance, job satisfaction, again, it's about the things. Engagement, presence, being there, for instance, and the other thing is that you want to learn more about each other. So you're asking questions all the time. So if you're asking them questions all the time, it's quite important because it seems that you engage. So when I started interviewing these people, the first thing that I did was ask questions. And you know what happens when you ask questions? People respond to you. The thing that I was saying earlier, do you know what else happens? You build rapport, you build trust. Okay? So imagine sitting in a room and you're talking to somebody who never asked you any question about yourself. So what do? Never. Who are you? Never. So they only talk about themselves. What do you think? They only talk about themselves. And I have not the pleasure, this is very comfortable, but I have been to those meetings where they were talking about themselves. 4 minutes, 4 hours, and then they were never asking me a question. You know how I felt? First of all, I felt bad. The second thing that I felt, this is rude. Right? This is rude. You know, he or she doesn't ask anything about me. So all these things are quite important. Then I started thinking about, because I was doing it, I'm very interested in a lot of things. I'm very interested in music, in architecture, in design, in business, in investing. And sometimes I was thinking, I'm interested in all these kind of things, but at the end of the day, what am I doing with all these things? Okay, so what do I do? What do I actually, in quotes, produce? So I said, I have to channel my curiosity. So by actually saying things, by actually putting myself into this mindset in terms of channeling my curiosity, I started working on this project. So I said, can I channel my curiosity? And the moment that I started thinking about this, I tell you something funny. Everything else disappears. So I'm only interested about this thing, what is in front of me. All the noise that actually was taking a lot of my attention disappeared. So I started looking at this, and I said, okay, so can I learn more about purposeful curiosity? And then I said, it's about us being inquisitive, but with a goal in mind. So we have to put a goal, for instance, that we're interested in learning more about something. We're interested in discovering something. When you're saying, I'm interested in discovering X, I'm interested in learning Y, then everything becomes a little bit clearer. So then I said, but how can we become? And what I did was, I went on a mission. Not like this, but I went on a mission because I wanted to figure out how things actually work. So I said, okay, man, you have to actually read a lot of things, and then you have to talk to people. So what I did is the normal academic things. So I went through a lot of papers, you know, from psychology, management, OB, leadership. There is a lot of stuff, especially psychology, and then I listened to podcasts, and I watched a lot of YouTube videos. But then I said, this can take me up to a particular, let's say, level. I need to talk to the people who are actually curious and who are channeling the curiosity towards a goal. So I said, I have to talk to people. So I talked to around 63 people. I couldn't actually find the slide as big to put 63 people. But I wanted to see a range. So I have people who have, for instance, who are managing companies which are at the cutting edge of technology, like, for instance, Graphcore at the bottom, where they're doing chips for artificial intelligence and machine learning, opera singers, video gamers, architects. So there was a huge range from Tokyo to Silicon Valley. So I wanted to interview men and women. I wanted to interview young people and old people, to figure out what happens in terms of their curiosity. And it's interesting what you learn. So there are a lot of interesting people, and there are a lot of people who are very curious, and who are paid to be curious every day. So I think this is quite important for us to realize. So what I've done was identify a couple of things which are interesting. So let me take you through to those important points as far as I'm concerned. The first one is we need to find our itch. Finding our itch is the most important thing. So what is the itch that you want to scratch, right? All of us have an itch. So what is this that we want to scratch? And then the first thing that I realized by talking to these people is all these people want to push the boundaries. This is what they want to do. They want to push the boundaries. Because they said, okay, I have to push the boundaries so that I could be at the front end of innovation, or the front end of questioning. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I said, it has to mean something to me. For me, this project meant something. It was personal, it was emotional, right? Because it took me back when I was younger, it takes me where I'm right now, so it's very emotional. And I'm going to open a parenthesis and close it very quickly. When we actually start the project, and we focus on the project, what we do subconsciously is we're also discovering things about ourselves, right? We're always discovering things about ourselves. So purpose must be personal. So there has to be a connection. And the third thing is that there has to be belief that I can understand what I want to research, right? I can't understand everything. So I'm not a trained mathematician. So even if I wanted, for instance, to learn more about a particular aspect of mathematics, I wouldn't succeed, right? But in terms of this, because I have done research in creativity and innovation, I felt that I get it, right? So it's something that I could do, it's something that I can understand. So to me, the itch becomes interesting if you want to push the boundaries, if it's personal to you, and if you feel confident that at one point you will master it or you will get it. So these are three important components in terms of finding something that can actually become your main itch. Then the other thing is what I was saying earlier. Stay annoying. There is a stigma with people who ask questions. So we have our own venture capital fund at my business school, and because we make investments, I have to be voice. So the first time that not mentioning the name, I ask a lot of questions. The CEO of the company gets irritated with me. He says, you are asking a lot of questions. And then I continue asking a lot of questions. And that's my job. First of all, I have to see how you're doing, how you develop a strategy. It's also about monitoring us being part of the board. It's also about offering solutions. So this is what we do. So we need to ask questions. And at one point he stopped me and he said to me, don't you trust us? And I said, I do, but this has nothing to do with me asking questions. So the fact that I was asking questions felt a little bit awkward to some people. So there is a stigma attached to asking questions, right? So we have to remember this. If we go back to Kipling, he said that gives 6 honest serving men. And of course, he was talking about what, why, when, how, where, and who. He was talking about questions and questions. And there are better questions, right? So I think it's important for us to realize this. And especially in entrepreneurship, these open-ended questions are amazing. So how does this work? So what do you want? Why things don't work? So you want to figure out something. And you have to stick asking those questions. For instance, in asking those questions, because you have to figure out the solution. You have to figure out the insights. So a lot of people are saying, I have to find interesting insights. Everything depends on the question. And the quality of the question, as all of you do, and I do, and I travel, and then at the end of the stay, as it happened to me today, they asked me, how was your stay? Right? And then what do you say? You return and you say, everything was great, right? Actually, I don't do this. If something is not good, then I tell them. But I'm a little bit, let's say, eccentric on this thing. But this is an okay question. How can we actually improve the question? What could we have done to improve your stay? So what is the difference between those two? So I'm asking you now. So what's the difference?
Personally first.
Yes?
Make more forthcoming.
Thank you. Do sport, understand your vision. Thank you. Yes?
The second makes you think. First time.
It makes you think, right? You pause and you start thinking. But also it something that we can improve, right? So tell us, what can we improve? So that's the first thing. Something that happens all the time in business, and especially in appraisals or evaluations. Are you facing any challenges? And then the employee says, no. Everything is great, right? And of course they have to say this, or it makes sense to say this, or career-wise it makes sense to say this. But then there is something else that we can do. What challenges are you facing right now? Again, what happens is that we are projecting that there are challenges. And as I face challenges as a leader, most probably you face challenges as an employee or somebody who works in my team. So I think it's important to change questioning. And a lot of people are asking me, so is there a stupid question? And I have to say, yeah, as an academic, no, in reality there is. So I have to say, no, there isn't a stupid question, right? And it depends. If you work in an organization where there are no questions, yes, you have to say this because you have to increase the rate of questioning. But as you are growing older as an organization, you have to actually improve the questioning. So with a lot of my students, we spend a lot of time in the questioning aspect rather than the solving aspect, right? As I was explaining earlier. So there was this very interesting study. And by the way, this is the title of the paper, which was written by an academic when she was at Wharton, now she is at Harvard. So the paper title was, There is such a thing as a stupid question, right? And of course they did an experiment, and the experiment was that participants were asked to play the role of a salesperson selling an iPod. So there were two sides, right? So one is the seller, one is the buyer. But the iPod crashed twice in the past, and it's not music there. So basically, there's a problem with the iPod. And then, of course, what the academics want to figure out is with which kind of questions, with what kind of questions, people will disclose that there's a problem with the iPod, right? So, again, the results are quite shocking. What can you tell me about the iPod? This is a question that we can all ask. But this prompted only 8% of the sellers to disclose the problem. Interesting? Yes? You don't ask me anything about the problem. So, what's the, can you tell me something? I can tell you a lot of things. It doesn't have any problems, does it? Increase the disclosure to 61%. So we're starting to become a little bit more specific here. Is there a problem, right? What problems does it have? 89% disclose that there is a problem. So imagine being at the bottom, most probably you have bought the item. And it doesn't work. Okay? So we're talking about investment, we're talking about entrepreneurship, we're talking about relationships in terms of investors and entrepreneurs. The quality of the questioning is extremely important. I cannot overestimate it, but it's extremely important. So that's the one thing. The third thing is that we have to learn by directly experiencing things. You know what happens with a lot of us? We live our lives via these fantastic devices. So we live in a very indirect manner, vicariously, through other people's eyes. Okay? Whether we like it or not, this is what happens. I don't know what it is. I don't trust this. I would like to experience this myself. And if you're a researcher, you would like to spend time on the field, figure out what happens with real people in real companies having real problems. So I think this is important. So a lot of times when we're talking about directly experiencing, we're talking about observation. Observing. And I notice this in London. So for instance, I walk in London and I see a lot of people doing this, right? Most probably it happens here as well. So they don't look at the surroundings. They don't observe. Their muscle, which is something that we have to train, is not strong. If you were observing, you can identify a lot of interesting needs, a lot of things that people don't tell you about, right? Because they don't know. So for instance, I'll share a very personal story. So when I started teaching, somebody had to actually observe me, and they said to me, Kostas, you are actually using your hands a lot. You're moving your hands. You're moving your arms. And I said, no, I never do this. Because if you move your arms and you move your hands, it's very distracting, right? I said, honestly, I never do this. And somebody videotaped me. And then he showed me, he said, no, you're doing this. And I said, what? I wasn't lying, right? But I didn't know that I was doing this. I was doing a lot of things subconsciously. Then I said, yes, I have to actually put my arm somewhere firm so that people will actually focus on what I'm saying and my pretty face rather than my arms, right? Why do you like it? because it's a pretty you have a very tough crowd. Okay. So observation is key. Spending time with customers is key. So for instance, we're doing executive education. There is a leadership team from one of the biggest breweries. And then I ask the chief marketing officer, who is your user? And they respond to me. We get a fantastic market research report that explains to us who our target audiences are. I said, no. And let me rephrase the question, which I didn't. I said, who is your user? We get a fantastic market research report. I said, no. And then, I actually took a risk and I said, okay, let's stop what we're doing now, figure out 5 questions that you want to actually ask your potential users or your actual users, a couple of things that you want to observe, and keep the streets downstairs, because I'm in the city of London, right? So they own a lot of these pubs. And which is what they did. So the whole team generated the questions, points in terms of observing, and then they hit the pubs. They come back, so I tell them, let's talk, 2 hours, come back with some interesting insights. They come back after 3 hours. So I was paid and I was actually sitting there, that's the best project. And then they come back with full of ideas. This is the best thing that has happened once. We talk to people, we observe people, they told us a lot of things. I said, yeah, this is what you should be doing. So the whole point here is that they learn a lot. They learn a lot by spending a couple of hours with their actual users. And the other thing which is important is, of course, which actually goes with what I was saying earlier, is you have to make notes, right? You have to remember what each person is doing or is saying, because this can actually give you a lot of interesting insights. So I interviewed these people. Adrian Newey, who is one of the best engineers in Formula 1. He works for Red Bull. So he told me something very interesting about this, is that on paper everything works, but when you take the car on the track, everything doesn't work. So, and the other thing that he told me was very interesting is that we learn more from failure rather than from success. Which is interesting, because when something fails, it makes you more intrigued, more curious to figure out how you can, for instance, respond to things. Raphael Dobson, he developed this catamaran, you can say, with solar power. He actually did the whole planet by not using, let me take it back, by using only solar energy. Right? It took it some time. So again, there are a lot of things that may go wrong. What you do is that you improvise, you correct, and then you move on. And of course, Felicity Aston, who is a polar explorer, I also interviewed a lot of polar explorers who are amazing individuals. And you don't go on your own, unassisted, in the Arctic or the Antarctic, right? Without doing a lot of research, without not being curious. So a lot of these people actually lose a lot of weight. Let me ask you a question. Who are the people that can help them to figure out what they can do with sudden loss of weight? Who are the people who know a lot in the medical, let's say, profession about losing a lot of weight very quickly without you wanting to?
Formula 1 drivers.
Well, driver, yes. It takes them 2 hours to lose a lot of weight. But if you're a patient, then you lose a lot of weight very suddenly. Who is the doctor? As a patient, yes. Oncology. So the way oncology, they say, how can we respond, for instance, losing 10 kilos or 15 kilos in 1 month or something like that? So they do a lot of research. And by the way, they showed me this. They have loads of Excel sheets. Loads. When I say loads, I haven't seen this even in Instagram. Because for everything that they're doing, they're always thinking, what happens if it breaks? You're on your own. There is there in those environments, and I know a couple of people who are polar explorers, if you get it wrong, you die. So it's not like you can come back. No, you die. Okay, and if they find you. So it's important for us to realize that curiosity saves life at the same time. And there are other studies not about polar explorers. So that's the other thing which is important. You actually do a lot of research. You talk to a lot of people before you jump into something. Be action-oriented. This is what I was discussing earlier. You have to translate things into something. It has to mean something to you. How you have to develop something. You channel your curiosity to develop something. So I think this is important. And again, when I'm talking about developing something, it's about asking questions. What's the concept? What the context? What are we missing? So what other people are missing? And I'm going to give an example. So I talked to the CEO and founder of Rocket Lab. So Rocket Lab is mainly the competitor of Elon Musk in SpaceX. They're based in New Zealand. It's an American company based in New Zealand. The guy is from there. And while we were talking, he was saying to me, everybody gets it wrong. That everybody focuses on the rocket, right? And they're not partially wrong. They're partially right, right? Because in order for you to figure out what works and what doesn't work, you have to launch the rocket. You cannot simulate, you have to do it yourself. So what he did, which is something that a lot of others haven't done, was the following. He said, can I find a place in our planet that I can actually launch rockets quicker and more frequently than everybody else? Because this is like a trial and error. You launch a rocket, boom, next experiment. If you're in the US, you have to wait months, right? So the next experiment, which actually delays your learning, or your hypothesis, or your questions, takes months. So I'll have to wait a couple of months. So what he did was he scanned the whole planet, and he found one location in New Zealand, which used to be a farm, where he could actually launch a rocket every 72 hours. Wow. This is wow. Because this is what leads to curiosity. This is what leads to interesting insights. By the way, this is fun, right? And what is the issue with this farm for the location? There is no air traffic, or very limited air traffic. And there isn't so much regulation, because if you go to Cape Town, there is regulation, there is a lot of traffic, blah, 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 blah. You have to wait for months, or a term in order to do this. So by doing this, what he did was that he could launch rockets whenever he wished. That's the one thing. The second thing is that he actually 3D prints a lot of the things that he uses in the rockets, right? Because now 3D printing has moved. So it's not like how we used to know it in a lab, in a university or home. Now you can find rockets, 3D printers that can build parts of rockets, houses, bridges, and the rest. So I think it's important for us to realize that the more curious you are, the results that we get, the insights that we generate are unbelievable. But we have to ask the right question. So the right question for him was, where can I find a place in the planet, in our Earth, where I can launch them off the rockets and learn from them? The other thing, which is my creation, was you have to bring in more curious people. So there are some characteristics that other curious people have, and a lot of these people told me. So for instance, you identify a particular way of solving a problem, and then you're saying, yeah, okay, but we are growing older, right, as a company, or we're growing older as human beings, so we need to stir the pot a bit. So we have to find other people. So your team needs to have, for instance, other curious people, people who are in favor of team working, who are not ashamed to be passionate about the subject. A lot of the people that I talked to, they didn't stop talking. It was amazing, right? They didn't stop talking. They were not stopping. I said, okay. They were in the flow. So it's very important to have people like this. Resilient. It's, I take it as granted that things will not work out. So you have to learn how to deal with, for instance, things not working out. You want people who will actually stir the pot, as I was saying, who have interesting questions, new questions to ask, and of course they have outside hobbies. It's important for somebody to have outside hobbies, whether this is music, cinema, craft, something else to do. Of course, somebody who will create things in a very tight deadline, and somebody who is also looking for surprises. So how can we surprise, for instance, our audience? How can we surprise, for instance, our clients? How can we surprise our students, right? So a lot of times, because I'm teaching entrepreneurship and new product development, I bring devices in the class, so I say, not this, everybody knows this, but I bring other electronic devices. And I say, okay, what do you think this is? What does it do? Do you like it? Then we, for instance, we try to get deeper in terms of the products. And then my students' attention is maximum, let's say, for a product, 10 to 15 minutes, maximum, if I'm lucky. But then, sometimes in the class, I perform magic. Right? Do you know how long they stick to the focus on magic in order to figure out? First of all, they know that I don't have the sixth sense. I'm not a magician. So they say there must be something with the product that they're using, right? So they spend not an hour, they even spend, for instance, the break. Because, for instance, I have a book that I'm using for magic, because there's a company in New York that has productized magic. So you can go online, you can find things in terms of you becoming a magician, right? So they spend more than an hour, even a break. So how did Costas do it? They will not leave the room without figuring out. So there is something that we have to remember in terms of sparking other people's curiosity. Well, it leads me to the final point, which is, it's interesting to work in an organization, it's interesting to be part of a team where we spark others, let's say, curiosity. So for instance, my daughter came one day and said to me, I went to Notting Hill and I found this, for instance, bookstore, and I don't know what the title is, but there is a description. Do you remember what I was saying earlier about give them some idea which will spark the curiosity? So this is what happened. So she came back with this, and she found it quite interesting that she didn't know what she bought, but it sparked her curiosity, and of course, she bought it. So the curiosity was translated for the bookstore into sales. In terms of entrepreneurship and venture capital, Bloomberg Beta is the venture capital arm of Bloomberg, the famous news organization. And then they said for us to invest in the companies, we either have to reach out to people, or we have to, we need to have referrals as it normally works, etc., etc. So what they did was they worked with an academic in terms of figuring out who, focusing on employees in a large organization, has the capability or has, for instance, the knowledge, the skills, etc., to become an entrepreneur. So what they did is they went to LinkedIn, they found thousands of profiles in particular areas. I think this one was in Northern California. Then they had an algorithm, and they said, okay, let's actually find people who can become entrepreneurs, but who don't know this yet. So they're just employees, right? And so one of, for instance, of the things that they had in the formula is that companies have to be, for instance, backed up by VCs or private equity. So the likelihood of somebody becoming an entrepreneur working in those kinds, let's say, of companies is higher. So they found all these kind of things, then they put in the formula, and then they said, well, identify these people. So a lot of unsuspected employees in those companies received that email. A lot of them received that email. And a lot of them thought that this was spam. And they deleted it. So they pressed delete, right? And then Bloomberg said, no, don't delete this. I mean, we think that you have the capability of becoming an entrepreneur, right? You have the right skills. So then, how do I know about this? Then it reads the news. And big news outlets that Bloomberg actually uses this way in terms of identifying founders before they know themselves that they can become founders. So this sparked the curiosity in a lot of people. So with this, let me actually stop here and let's have a conversation about the topic. I'm sure that you're all curious. So what keeps your curiosity back? We're supposed to have a Q&A, right? I'm doing this right. So nobody wants to ask a question after what I said about asking questions. Yes?
I'm curious.
Thank you.
You said you spoke with a lot of explorers.
Yes.
And I was wondering why they do the thing they do, or people that climb big buildings,
Yeah.
or walk on a wire, and it's so dangerous, and there's no incentive. This is my question.
Correct.
Why?
Why? First of all, I have the same question, as you do. There are a lot of different reasons. For some of them, it's about exploration itself. For some of them, it's not about exploration, because a lot of things have been explored. It was about more whether I can do it. It was about whether I can explore whether a human can actually achieve this goal. So it was more about us and what we could do and how we can prepare to make those trips. Because these trips are quite long. So, for instance, Ben Schnoder that I have talked to, it took him around 100 days. 100 days on his own, right? On your own 100 days. And actually he told me that the most amazing thing was the anticlimax. He thought that when he actually reached the destination, there would be, fireworks and stuff like that, and there was nothing. So, but I think a lot of them are about exploring. Some of them are about exploring where we, as human beings, can go to. So it's more like a self, let's say, exploration. Yes, Victoria.
So
This is the question that I paid you to ask me.
Okay. So pandemic was an absolute killer of curiosity. You know, you're not allowed to ask any questions. You need to obey. You need to follow the rules. did you, as such a curious person, survive this period? Because I know quite a few of us, you know, like we still have, you know, issues, you know, to overcome and the trauma to overcome, you know, like from not being allowed to ask questions. So I'm just curious.
Yes. First of all, I wrote a book during the pandemic. And to write something on your own without external stimuli, I wouldn't do it again. So it's very difficult, I think, to be creative during the pandemic. On the other hand, the fact that everybody was isolated actually offered the opportunity for conversations. So a lot of the interviews that I have done, I've done them during the pandemic. So the fact that I was in London, I was talking to somebody from in Tokyo, in Silicon Valley, or in New Zealand, I think that most probably, if it wasn't the pandemic, those interviews or those questions or those meetings will never have happened. I think people are now more open to have this conversation with people from different parts of the world. So on one hand, yes, you're right. On the other hand, I think it opened the possibility of talking to anybody. And actually, there isn't something that you can miss. I mean, when I started this project, I said, there is a failure rate, especially research, and there are a lot of academics here. When you do research and you try to work with people, people can tell you, no, I'm not interested, right? So I think a lot of people are, during the pandemic, were interested to talking to other people because they were also feeling lonely. So I think this is part of who we are. We want to be part of a tribe. So a lot of the people are telling me, I don't know who I am sometimes, because I also have this problem sometimes, because I have a lot of interest, I don't know who is my tribe. Like, a lot of people are looking for this. So during the pandemic, there was an opportunity to find your tribe. Remote. Yes? Yes, there was one question there.
Yeah, I actually think the pandemic offered new opportunities.
Yeah.
Some of us explored new research areas that we weren't even thinking before. Even at the onset of the pandemic, we dismissed them initially, and then people discovered new hobbies. Personally, I started baking bread.
Did you bring any bread today for us?
No, but I have it at home. I continue to bake. So you're welcome to come.
Yes.
Thank you for that. That's absolutely fascinating. I have a lot of questions, but I'll ask the most pressing one.
Yes.
As the mother of a teenager,
Yes.
I wanted to ask you if we have more research and more knowledge around the effects of social media on curiosity.
Yes.
And I have two issues. I'm thinking, on the one hand, it could kill curiosity.
Yes.
Because we have instant answers.
Yes.
Right? So we don't really need to go out searching for anything, or it could just be frivolous, as we mentioned. On the other hand, I'm wondering if the accessibility of knowledge sparks further questions. So as I'm listening to you, I'm not really sure which way the effects of social media could go, and I'm wondering if you have any answers or...
Yeah. So what I was doing, so I've done a lot of my research in Silicon Valley, a lot of curiosity on innovation. And then I have a CEO who told me I would like my employees to be 80% creative, 20% reactive. And if you look at both words, they use exactly the same letters. So if I use this as a way to answer your question, I think it's nice for us to be 80% purposeful and 20% frivolous. You need to have this kind of curiosity, right? So I'm not saying, and then you can play with the numbers. Now, I've just said this is an arbitrary number, but what I'm saying is that it's great for teenagers to have a project to focus on. And on the other hand, it's great for teenagers to also have some, let's say, me time, where they scroll and they do all these kind of things, and maybe new ideas will come and will fit into the project. What I see is that there is more frivolous curiosity rather than purposeful curiosity. So the balance is not right. So I'm not saying that I'm not saying that the one is better than the other. I'm saying we have to bring back the balance. Let me create a project, let me focus on this, let me come with an outcome. Frivolous doesn't lead to an outcome. It's just selfish time. You know, I'm looking at something, or I'm experiencing something, or I'm enjoying myself. So what am I doing with it? Nothing. And we need curious people who can actually convert the curiosity into something.
Can I ask you developmentally, videos, because you gave some data about what happens from childhood to adulthood. This development, has it changed through the decades? Do we have any data on this? In other words, in the 60s, without social media, did the number of questions diminish with the same rate as it
No, I think the questioning has increased. Because if you look, for instance, at new questions at Google, and it's increasing as a number. I think what is not increasing is the conversion into something. So people are asking, nothing happens. But in terms of questioning, it has increased. Yes.
Yeah, Panis, journalist. First, I want to apologize because I was late and I didn't see your presentation. But how do you understand? How do you get? Personally, I'm always trying to do ask the right questions to other entrepreneurs, and etc. How do you know what is right? I mean, is the answer that you get that makes the right question, or is the knowledge that you have as a person that is asking this question,
Yes,
that makes the right question the right question?
yes. That's a great question. I think you have to do it for some time. I'm a qualitative researcher, which means I spend a lot of time with companies, talking to people, interviewing, observing, etc., etc. And in my life, I have done, I don't know how many cases in terms of companies, maybe 12 cases, I remember. I interviewed around 300 people. So you become better in terms of questioning. Now, the important thing is when you question, you try to figure out whether they give you the answer that you want to hear in what sense. Whether they give you the honest answer, or whether they give you the corporate answer. What the organization wants you to know. And there are a couple of things that you can actually go around this. You can ask them about an example. So I'm talking to a lot of companies where they're saying, they're claiming they're innovative. So they're saying, we're innovative. They're saying, okay, so when was the last time that you were innovative? It's a question, right? So when was the last time? So if they take some time to respond, most probably they want you to know that they're innovative, but in reality they're not. Or if they say 3 months ago, and most probably they're not innovative, right? Because it's something that they do once in a while, rather than something which is part of their DNA. So that's the one thing. For us to understand also whether they are giving an honest answer is, I'm always looking at my words. How long it takes them to respond to the answer. If it takes them a lot of time, it means that they are manufacturing the answer. If it's a boom answer, it means that they are actually giving you, most of the time, I'm not saying these are bulletproof, let's say, solutions to the problem, is that they give you a little bit of a better answer. So there are some ways to figure out, but it requires a little bit of skill. And if I'm honest with you, curiosity and asking questions also implicitly is about misbehaving. It's about this. It's about not following the norms. Because people would like to follow the norms, right? So it's about going a little bit outside the norms. It's about asking things that nobody else asks, right? So it's about this. So when I was a child or a student, I was very, very naughty. Yes, and I was a little bit here. Yes.
Great presentation, Professor. I have something that scares me. I will explain what.
I have a lot of things that scare me. Yes.
This in particular. So you said about you learn, obviously, you learn more from failure, right?
Yes.
From negative results.
Yes.
So in most of the cases, scientific articles and us as researchers always report, the results that are positive.
Yes.
And we don't, in most of the cases, we don't report the negative results.
Yes.
So I'm a young scientist, which I'm curious, and I have a little bit of a hypothesis. But obviously, at the beginning, I have to justify the hypothesis, validate through my library research.
Yes.
So I'm using those journals. So a lot of brain is there. And I'm building something, or maybe I'm challenging something, and I'm not going to move forward because I don't have the raw material necessary enough to challenge my hypothesis or the failures to justify that here I can move from this angle to create an innovative product towards the future. So what's your opinion?
In academia, we don't learn from each other's failures. We never learn, right? Because nobody publishes those kinds of papers that say, okay, I've done this and it failed, and I've done that and it failed. So there isn't a general failure. The general failure studies or something like that. So we don't have this kind of journals. But there is a high failure rate in academia, right? Especially with the journals that we are going after. A lot of the journals that we want to publish in, maybe the acceptance rate is 3% globally. And so there is a failure rate.
So in most of the cases you were saying that we keep on failing, but we don't know that.
Of course, we don't learn from each other's failures. Yes. Because to me, the failure is one thing, and it's okay. But the other thing which is important, especially in organizational level or environment, is that you don't want to repeat the same failure rate. To me, to fail once is fine. To fail twice, it's a problem. It is a problem. It means that you're not learning from your failures. So I think it's important for us to start. In my school, we have some days where we talk about failure. And but in our school, we do a lot of things differently. So academics say, okay, I did this and it didn't work out. So, and the other people are learning from it. I think there is a lot of value in learning from failure.
Maybe we should switch the impact factor.
Yeah. Reporting the failures.
Lowering down the positive stuff.
But there is a large failure rate. But if you look at the CVs, especially of academics, you only see the success story, right? Yes. Yes.
Congratulations for your excellent presentation. Now, back to the pandemic. We are 3 years into the pandemic, and our epidemiology team, at least in Cyprus, consists of 10 or 12 excellent scientists, but epidemiologists and related fields. Now, one of the excellent team, Mr. Leonidas Kostrekis, is an excellent scientist from the University of Cyprus, indicated that he would have liked to have also other disciplines in the epidemiology task force team. For example, for transport, for business, for economics, sociologists, psychologists, risk managers, innovators. But 3 years into the pandemic, and we still have only epidemiologists. Now, my question is, are you aware of any country or EU level or WHO, World Health Organization, or any country that has, for this multidisciplinary problem, has created a multidisciplinary task force? I think if we set up a multidisciplinary task force from the beginning, many disciplines in the task force, they would have tackled the pandemic much more effectively, which would have translated into millions, the prevention of millions of deaths. I mean, it was an obvious question that Mr. Kostrekis indicated from the beginning, but still, I don't know, are you aware of any country that has included any other discipline in their task force? Thank you.
I'm not aware, which doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. I'm not aware of a country that does this, but in terms of having teams, okay, let me actually answer it in the following way. You need to have a team where you can have the breadth of expertise, but you can also have the depth. A lot of people are saying, I need a team. You also need the team and the individual. So you need, for instance, individuals to go deep, and then you need the teams in order to go in terms of the breadth. A lot of the times, companies and organizations and governments focus on the depth, they don't focus on the breadth. But these are equally important. So it's not either or, you need both. And sometimes companies or non-profit organizations or governments don't understand the importance of having the depth and the breadth. But you're absolutely right, it's something that I haven't seen. But I'm not in that area, so I don't want to mislead you or misguide you. I cannot answer that. Yes?
Thank you very much for the talk. Based on your experience, you interviewed many people and successful people, I would say. And if we consider in the area of entrepreneurship that a lot less succeed compared to those that are unsuccessful in entrepreneurial ventures, although a lot of people want to turn towards entrepreneurship,
something to answer your question. So for instance, in Greece, there are waves of innovation, as I'm referring to them, and I'm joking. For instance, there was one, let's say, decade where everybody was opening a souvlaki place. There was a decade where everybody was opening a frozen yogurt place. There was a decade where everybody does Airbnb. Okay. If somebody is curious, they will figure out that if you're number 55, who starts a souvlaki place, a frozen yogurt, an Airbnb, you won't survive. So most probably these people are not curious at all. They just hear something in a taverna in the night, they say, ah, this person made money 4 years ago, where there was no competition. Now there are other 50 people doing exactly the same thing in the same street. So there is a lot of competition, and then they do this, and after 1 year, they have to sell the property, right? So I'm just giving you a very simple example. So to me, a lot of entrepreneurs are not curious when they start. Are not. They just go with the impulse or, you know, with the heart, but they're not doing any real research. So that's the one thing. For me, a good entrepreneur, to compare it with a not a very good entrepreneur, is that a good entrepreneur will not fall in love with the product. A good entrepreneur will fall in love with a question and continuously fall in love with new questions. I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs where they fall in love with their own creation. And you know what the problem is? Markets are moving. So maybe your creation is not relevant anymore. But if you have new questions to answer, then new products will happen, new services will happen, etc., etc.
Can take one more question.
Yes. There was, yes.
What actually led you to, what was the spark behind this research, going ahead with the research, eventually leading to the book? What was that?
Yes. I wanted to figure out how people challenge their curiosity for a long period of time. So literature so far has curiosity as something of the moment. Right? So I'm curious about something, I'm researching, I close the gap, I'm done, I move to the next thing. I wanted to figure out how people sustain the curiosity for a long period of time in terms of the project, and I wanted to figure out how people sustain the curiosity as they grow older. Because all the studies show that curiosity goes like this and then it drops. Right? So first it's school, high school, university, we kill everything, then workplace, again we kill everything. So I want to figure out what happens to these people in terms of sustaining the curiosity, or what happens in organizations to sustain the curiosity of their employees.
And the outcome?
The outcome is what a little bit of what I showed you today.
We need to see the outcome of your curiosity.
The outcome of my curiosity in the book, which is for sale, and I will encourage all of you to buy it.
Sales pitch.
Sales pitch, yes. I mean, entrepreneurship, right? This is what I teach my students. If you want business, you have to sell, right? There is no business without selling.
There's a problem. We want it right now.
You want it now. Right now, I'm creating a new complexity, which is scarcity. Right now, it doesn't exist. No, I'm joking. It does exist in the US.
Yes. So, thank